This year's conference is already the 16th annual conference of our research network. For those of you who are attending for the first time, I would like to say just a few words about the history and organization of FMM. The first conference of the network took place back in 1997, and the conference title was The Renaissance of Macroeconomics. A mere 14 papers were presented, all of them in German, and discussed by a total of 35 participants. Since then, we have seen quite an impressive development as the network has grown and internationalized steadily. Today, the research network is run by an international coordinating committee whose 13 members are based in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and the UK. Organizationally, the network is based at the Macroeconomic Policy Institute, IMK, at the Hans-Böckler Foundation in Düsseldorf. Since 2007, when the conference title was Finance-Led Capitalism, Macroeconomic Effects of Changes in the Financial Sector, we have consistently seen large conferences with around 100 paper presentations and more than 200 participants from all over the world. And I'm very happy to announce that this year we are breaking the record again with more than 300 registrations. And what we find especially encouraging is that there are so many young people among the participants. In fact, of the more than 330 conference registrations, no less than 180 also registered for the introductory workshop for graduate students and young researchers, which took place yesterday with lectures by Marc Lavoie, Engelbert Stockhammer, Sebastian Dolin, and Tom Stanley. Let me therefore emphasize here that one of the primary objectives of the research network has always been to bring together and support young economists who were discontent with the prevailing orthodoxy in economics and who wanted to explore innovative and more meaningful and useful ways of doing economics. Besides the introductory workshop at this conference, we organized a summer school for advanced students and young researchers, which takes place every uneven year during the first week of August. The next summer school will take place next year in 2013, and you will find additional information about it in your conference folders. I would like to encourage all the young people around to apply, because it is always great fun and a very good way to meet new colleagues and friends. Also, as you can see in the conference program, we will have more than 20 graduate student presentations in 6 parallel graduate student sessions this afternoon. I'd like to strongly encourage everybody, including the professors and senior scholars, to attend the graduate student sessions and to participate in the discussion with the younger generation. Now, let me say a few words on our conference theme, the state of economics after the crisis. Basically, when looking at the titles of the past 3 conferences, they were all about the global financial crisis. And many of the contributions that were published in our conference proceedings during the years before the Great Recession were in some way warning about the possibility of a severe crisis. Or at least, they were criticizing mainstream economics for being unable to even ask the right questions about financial market instability and macroeconomic imbalances. Last week, when preparing for this conference, I had a look at some of our previous conference books and found it truly remarkable how accurately some authors, and in fact many of you who are here, actually understood very well what was going wrong in the economy and in economics many years before the crisis. But at this conference, we want to look ahead and ask how economics as a discipline ought to change in reaction to the crisis. As we argued in the call for papers for this conference, the mainstream textbook economics, based on the fiction of rational agents and efficient markets, have clearly failed to foresee the crisis and cannot explain its underlying causes. But although various deviant schools of thought have always been critical of the free market economics, the Great Recession came as a big surprise also to many heterodox economists. Moreover, a new mainstream economics has not yet emerged from the intellectual bankruptcy of the previous dominant paradigm. This year's FMM conference therefore asks the question, what is and what should be the state of economics after the crisis? End of quote. It is obviously not my role here, nor do I have the competence to tell you how exactly a new paradigm in economics should look like. But I do hope that the present conference will contribute to the development of new ideas for a better economics in several dimensions. The first theme that unites most of the participants here is, of course, the critique of the current austerity measures, especially in Europe, which are causing so much economic and social damage virtually as we talk. Inevitably, and very importantly, many presentations at this conference will in some way or the other be related to fiscal policy and public debt issues. This is, of course, the area in which innovative theoretical analysis and competent policy advice is most urgently needed. But in addition to the austerity crisis, there are also several other crises happening just in front of our eyes, including an inequality crisis in many countries, and of course the environmental crisis. Certainly a further objective of this conference is, therefore, that we as critical macroeconomists continue to learn from the insights of other areas in economics, such as in particular the behavioral and ecological economics and the other social sciences more broadly. Let me just give you two examples which I personally find very important. I'm sure that many people in this audience would share the view that excessive income inequality was one of the main deeper causes of the financial and economic crisis. This is especially true, of course, for the United States, where increasing inequality since the 1980s has contributed to the rise of household indebtedness to unsustainable levels, but also at the international level. However, this intuitive insight is not yet routinely incorporated in macroeconomic models or empirical work in a rigorous way. Clearly, the long dominant general equilibrium models based on the fiction of a unique representative agent are completely useless for analyzing issues of income distribution. Therefore, one of the challenges for the future will be to incorporate behavioral insights about how income inequality affects the consumption and borrowing decisions of households into formal macroeconomic models and policy-oriented empirical research. A second field where I think more progress has to be made is the issue of the environment and the limits to economic growth. Although I know even in this audience the topic is controversial. As macroeconomists, we are not necessarily competent to assess the extent to which further economic growth will be environmentally sustainable. But we should be able to say more about the possibilities of making our economy less growth dependent. And this requires, at least in my view, a better understanding of why most people still seem to desire more economic growth rather than taking more leisure. Again, the link with income inequality seems to be obvious, but I believe that as macroeconomists, we can still learn a lot here from behavioral and ecological economics. Given the severity of the multiple crises that we are facing, I believe it is very important that people with different backgrounds, coming from different paradigms, engage with each other and work together for scientific and social progress. Looking at the conference program, I am therefore very excited that not only the points that I have just made very briefly, but also many other pressing issues in terms of both economic theory and policy making will be debated at this conference. It is, of course, physically impossible to attend all the 36 parallel sessions and almost 120 presentations. But you will find many of the conference papers on our website, and also, similar to past conferences, we will again publish a selection of papers after the conference. However, unlike in previous years, we will not publish a conference book, but a papers and proceedings issue of the European Journal of Economics and Economic Policies, or EG, formerly known as Intervention. Luckily, you can still buy all our previous conference books, and you should, of course, urgently buy the proceedings of last year's conference, which has just come out. It's the red book over here. So all the previous conference books look like this. And remember, this may well be the last time in your life that you can buy an FMM conference book. So please do go ahead and buy it. And of course, please do subscribe to the new journal EG if you're interested in the papers and proceedings of this year's conference. By the way, tomorrow there will be a special session for journal presentations tomorrow, just before the second plenary session. Before we start with the first plenary session, I would like to thank again the Hans-Böckler Foundation for all the generous support of the Research Network and of course for funding this conference. I also want to thank all of you for coming and hope that you will all enjoy the conference. I hope that the paper presentations and discussions will be stimulating, but that there will also be enough time for meeting friends and colleagues during coffee breaks, lunch and dinners, to which all of you are invited by the Hans-Böckler Foundation, both today and tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming and enjoy the conference.